Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Bridging the Gap. I am Bishop Vanessa M. Brown. I'm your host and moderator for this evening. I bet some of y'all don't even know what song that is. Ha ha! I am Everyday People, which I love. And tonight I have a wonderful guest. I've known this brother for about 10 years. He's a director at the Human Rights Campaign, where he leads the National HIV and Health Equity Portfolio, which aims to end HIV stigma and discrimination and achieve health equity for LGBTQIA plus communities, especially Black and Latinx, gays, bisexual, and other sexual minority men, people living with HIV, and youth and young adults. Now, I've known him for about 10 years. He's getting better and better as he goes. I know him as a progressive disruptor, a radical racial and social justice strategist, and an angelic troublemaker, passionate about eradicating HIV and achieving health equity. And I invited him because he actually knows what he's talking about. Torrian, do us a favor and just say hello to everyone.
Hello, everybody. As Bishop said, I am Torrian Baskerville, he, him pronouns, and I am super excited to have this conversation. I haven't realized that it has been over 10 years that I have known you, but I am happy to have this conversation and to share out a very important and passionate conversation and topic of mine is around HIV and health equity. So, yeah, I'm ready.
Excellent. Thank you so much for saying yes. And these are very important conversations to me as well. I believe that in what I have read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the numbers are rising. 18 to 25 and 50 plus men are contracting HIV. We know that we've been dealing with this, what I consider to be an epidemic still, 30 plus years. And kind of like not at square one, but we're kind of like circling back, right? And I want to hear from you. What do you think the trends are? What's really happening, and what do you think the base and the causes are?
So that's a very complex question, right? There is no one answer to or one remedy to that question. There's a multitude of things. Just so to paint a picture for everyone, we are seeing a decrease, right? There are decreases in new incidences across the board for the most part. We've seen a 12% decrease overall in new incidences since between 2018 and 2022. And so there is progress. However, there's not enough progress, particularly when we are talking about Black and Latina folks, as well as Black women, particularly, right? Those numbers, particularly around Black women, are increasing. And so there's a lot of reasons why that is. One of the reasons why that is the social drivers of health, right? We're talking about mental health. We're talking about housing insecurity. We're talking about food insecurity. We're talking about access to healthcare and adequate healthcare, which is very difficult and challenging for individuals of color when you think about racism, right, and medical mistrust that exists within our community. And so there's many reasons why those things happen. The other part of this, particularly when we're talking about Black women, is historically HIV has been seen as a gay disease within the community, right? And that has also been reflected when we're looking at the numbers, right? You pointed it out that Black and Latina sexual minority men are consistently higher numbers of new incident rates, right? And so healthcare providers, government and folks trying to address HIV has always focused on that community, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, when you focus on one community, you leave other communities out.
Absolutely.
And so Black women have been left out, as well as trans women, right? And trans men have been left out of the conversation of HIV. And so, us as health HIV professionals and folks who are working in public health are working every day to kind of shift that paradigm and start including depictions of Black women in HIV, videos or commercials or ads talking about the importance of PrEP or pre-exposure prophylaxis, which can prevent the contraction of HIV, right? Or getting on medication, getting tested, and then getting on medication. And so, yes, that numbers are increasing in certain areas and certain populations. However, overall, we are seeing some really good work and progress in where we came from to where we are now in 2024.
Do you see where religion plays a role in any of this, positive or negative?
Yes, both, right? Bishop, you've been my pastor for a while, and you are a progressive person of the cloth that I think looks at this holistically, right? And so I think from a positive perspective, it's important that we have more folks like you and more what I call accomplices in this work, right? And then also we cannot deny or not give voice to the harm that has been caused by theology and folks who are misusing theology for the sake of oppressive nature, right? And so for me, we're thinking about LGBTQ people in particular, right? How many folks have been shamed, right? Many folks have been harmed in the pulpit, right? Yes. And sexuality has been weaponized in the pulpit. Absolutely. Sex has been weaponized in the pulpit. And so when we think about how religion has contributed to where we are, that speaks for itself, I think, in many ways, right? I also want to add too that when we think about the South, right, because the South has high numbers of HIV incidences currently. It decreased from where it was before, down by 16%, but the number is still high. When you think about that, you think about the South, there is a very religious culture in the South compared to other regions of the country, right? And so, we can't. That also is the area of the country that is predominantly Black, right? And so there's a lot of correlation in all of those different intersections and how we have gotten to the place we've gotten when it comes to HIV epidemic.
And in your guesstimation, because you have been doing this work for so long, particularly working with youth and young adults, I know, what would you suggest that clergy, people of faith, faith leaders, what would you suggest that they do? How can they stem the tide? Because young people are not coming to church. We know this. We go into brunch. Yeah. Not we. I'm still going to brunch though, Torrian. Okay, whatever. Going to brunch. They're not going to church, right? Yeah. Right. They are removed because the church has placed a barrier, not because they put up one.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think the first thing is realizing and remembering that to be a believer of Christ is to believe that we should be taking care of the less of these, right? And so this is when we think about, I talked about social drivers of health, right? And I talked about, housing instability, food insecurity, right? Not having access to insurance, all healthcare insurance, so all of those things play a factor in someone prioritizing their sexual health, right? Yeah. Or doing things that can help prevent contracting HIV or any disease for that matter, right? Any infection, right? And so I think it's incumbent upon the church to realize, one, the power in which they hold within community, and then to utilize that power for good and not for self-aggrandizement, right? And I think that, I'm trying to figure out how,
Just say it.
because
It's all right.
it's it is um I think that it's important that church realize that we are human beings, all of us are, right? And none of us come without sin. And we have a different conversation around what is classified as sin and what is not, right? That's a different conversation. But ultimately, I think it's incumbent upon the church, because the church has always been this place for folks, is a place to take care of people. And so we have to get back to taking care of people. Church folk have to get back to taking care of people. And I think the other piece too is that teaching or talking about sex does not mean that people are encouraged to have sex.
That's right.
Right? No more than teaching someone math encourages them to become a mathematician. Right? Or teaching someone how to read is encouraging them to become an English teacher. Right. It is giving folks basic information that we all know is information to help them improve their life. Right. And so we can't on one hand say we want procreation to have babies, but then not talk about all of the things that come with procreation and having babies.
That's right.
And so I think it's important that we, and the church can take the lead on this, right? Yes. Folks like you are taking the lead on it. Folks like, Bishop Yvette Funder are taking the lead on these conversations, right? Yeah. And so I think it's important that we continuing to hold space like this, but also moving beyond just these conversations, right? And what are folks doing? And that means if you don't have the information, you can contact folks like myself, contact other advocates and activists within the community who's doing this work, who can come and have conversations with your communities, but also with your congregation. Yep. If you don't feel comfortable, that's okay, right? LGBTQ people are not going anywhere. Right. And so to act like we don't exist is just not living in reality. And so that's what I would say to clergy. If you are uncomfortable with having those conversations, feel free to reach out to us, folks like me, other folks who are doing the work on the ground, who can come in and do it in a way that's respectful, in a way that is honoring what you may have set up within the church, and also is realistic, is authentic, and is honest for the people who need the information most.
I like that. And, the information you just gave as it relates to clergy, that we're supposed to be caring for the people. That's our job, to care for the people. And it's funny that you said that, because I just got a conversation a couple of hours ago with Bishop Flunder, and that was one of the things she was talking about, right? Clergy, bishops, whoever, pastors, whatever your title is, that our first job, we have to care for the people, whatever that means, right? And I find that a lot of people that are named clergy are not taking care of the people. They're taking care of themselves. Right. And you know what? And it could be a both and taking care of yourself. But you got to remember that the reason why you have a clergy job is because you were called to the people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this whole situation that you have just given us, and all of the information that you've given us, and it's brilliant information. I want to know, as you have continued in this work, do you see us stemming the tide of HIV?
Absolutely. I 100% believe that. I don't think I or any other advocate or activist would be doing the work that we do if we didn't think that we could get a handle on this and we could turn things around. Yes. I think there's going to be some real steps that we have to take and continue to take in order to get to that place. And one of the things that I talked about, that I will keep talking about, is social drivers of health. We cannot talk about really addressing HIV epidemic without also addressing the social drivers of health. And here's other piece of it. Religion is a social driver of health, right? Where we go and worship, how we worship, who we believe in, how we believe, how we practice, all of those things impact how we see ourselves, what we have access to, and all of those things that impact how we show up in other spaces. And so these are things that are not separate from each other. All of these things are intertwined. And so we really have to handle these social drivers of health so that folks have the space and capacity to deal with the sexual health and overall health and wellness, right? Because I think, it's not just we're having a conversation about HIV, but, we're talking about high blood pressure. We're talking about high cholesterol. We're talking about heart disease. We're talking about all of these other things that we represent. And when I say we, I mean Black folk, right? Yes. Represent at higher numbers. And so, we have to take a holistic approach, an intersectional approach, a syndemic approach to this in order to really turn the tide on this. And we have to be real with ourselves. We have to have honest conversations about sex, sexuality. We need to expand healthcare for folks. We need to increase access to healthcare and adequate, stigma-free healthcare. When folks are coming to you, when I first started this work and I started counseling youth and young adults, one of the things that my mentor at the time said to me when I first started was, this work is not about you. Mm-hmm. And I've carried that out of it throughout my 14 years of doing this work, because it's true. This work isn't about me. Will it impact me? Absolutely, because I'm a part of the communities to which I'm serving. However, this isn't about me. And what that means is I can't go into it with, how do I get something out of this for me? Right. Yes. Instead of, how am I putting into what the community needs and showing up for the community? And what does that look like? And always being a voice for community. I have access to tables that many folks from where I come from don't have access to. And so if I'm not at those tables representing their voice, then I am doing a disservice to what I've been giving and the privilege that I've been giving. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to really do our due diligence to help move this along. One of my colleagues say all the time, Dr. Tatiana Moten, that HIV, everyone is HIV possible.
I love it.
Right? That everyone is HIV possible. And we are seeing that in the numbers. We are seeing that in the incidences, right? Like, yes, some are more impacted, but everybody has space within this epidemic. And all of us, that means, has to do our part to address it in meaningful ways.
As a person who has, again, been doing this work for a very long time and coming across youth and young adult, when a young person becomes HIV positive, or any person, but specifically young people, what would you say to them?
So I think the first thing I want to do, and I want to do this in love with this platform, is I think language is important, right? And I didn't talk about it, but I want to take the opportunity to talk about it now. And remember that we are all dealing with humans, right? Yes. And so his first thing is acknowledging people's humanity. And so what I want to offer folks is, instead of using language like HIV positive people, because that puts people's HIV status before their humanity, right? But say people living with HIV, right? Yes. Because again, we're putting people's humanity before their status. And so what I usually say with folks who start, who's just been newly diagnosed, is first focus on you, right? Mm-hmm. How do I focus on you? What do you need? It is not my job to tell you what you need. I need you to tell me what you need in this moment and do my very best to address it. I think the other thing, and we can get caught up in this, many of us who do this work, is saying, HIV has progressed so much, it's no longer a death sentence, you can live long lives. And the reality is this, that is not true for everybody. Right? It is not true. There's folks who have been in care for years and do not reach viral suppression for many different reasons, right? And so I think it's incumbent upon us to think about how we utilize language. And there may be ways, I think we're well-intentioned, right, when we're having these conversations, and like, we want to be encouraging, but we also want to be realistic, right? And we don't want to portray false hope. And so I think it's important that we create that balance, or find that balance. And so for me, it really is about figuring out what that person needs, seeing that person, making sure that in this space, in this moment, this person feels heard, this person feels seen, this person knows that they're still a human and that they deserve love, happiness, joy, and all of the things that everybody else who lives and exists has and deserves, right? And so I think that's always my first priority, is the person that's sitting in front of me, and how do I center that person?
So So here is, I said HIV positive. You said people living with HIV, but
Correct.
someone told me when I said people living with HIV, they said, Bishop, I'm not living with HIV. HIV is living with me.
So
And I was like,
yes,
okay, I
period.
was like,
Reframe
okay,
it.
hey, like,
Right.
hey,
Yeah.
however way you would, with everyone, they was like, yeah, they was like, Bishop, HIV is living with me. I'm not living with it. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It's not
Yeah.
controlling my life because
Right.
I'm still doing what I'm doing. I was like, okay, I got that. So
Yeah.
that made me think
Yeah.
about what they said, which is,
Yeah.
I hear you. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Language
Yeah.
is important,
Yeah.
right?
And everybody use it different, right? Like some people
Absolutely.
say, I'm thriving with HIV,
Yes,
right?
I've heard
Again,
people say that.
it's that sense
Absolutely.
of yeah. And so I think people get to decide how they want to address it for themselves. But when
Absolutely.
we are referring to folks, I think it's incumbent upon us to center their humanity.
Absolutely. And so
Yeah.
let me ask you this question. Since we talk about that, I think that I was speaking to another young person and they were lamenting,
Hmm.
lamenting about their family,
Yeah.
and them feeling cast aside,
Yeah.
and like a pariah. And it made me think about, it made me go 30 years back, right? When the church did
Yeah.
the same thing to other young people, musicians mainly, and other people that had contracted the virus, and it was the way that we did things, the
Yeah.
way that we made people feel, the way that we did not center people's humanity, right?
Yeah.
Which is a which is a conversation that should have always been,
Yeah.
but now it is almost like a new conversation that's beginning because we're saying to people over and over again that we must center people's humanity. They're
Yeah.
not just a number. They're not just, you know what I mean? They're not the disease.
Yeah.
They're not, just like, I don't want anybody to say, when when I get COVID, you know what I'm saying? Or if I have any other kind and I do have other things that happen to me within my body,
Yeah.
I am not that.
Right.
And so I was trying to explain to him that I cannot speak for your family.
Yeah.
I do not know who they are, but I can say that everything that they say about you is not true,
Yeah.
right? Everything that they're saying about your life, you're going to hell, all of these negative things that we can
Yeah.
possibly think of that we're going to say to people to make them feel already worse than they already do, right? Especially when they receive the diagnosis. And he was weeping. And all I can do is say to him, you're not who they say you are. You're not even this diagnosis. You're not this diagnosis. Can you hear me? Torian can't hear us. All right. Let's see. Stand by. I don't know why. Can you hear me now? Tony? No. Torian, can you hear us now?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Here we go. Here we go.
I
We can
can't.
hear,
I can't hear you.
you can't hear me.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you. I don't know
Okay.
what's happening. Yeah,
I
we're
don't
back.
know either, but that's all right because we gonna plow through this conversation. We are not going. That's how I know that this is something that I am supposed to be doing, and
Yes,
people are supposed to be
indeed,
hearing, and that it's supposed to
indeed.
go out because this is a very important conversation, and we're not having it enough in our churches.
Yeah,
We're not having it enough in our mosque. We're not
yeah,
having it enough in our synagogues. We're not having it enough in the places where people go to worship. And so it's important that we continue to have these conversations so that people can hear again what is right language, what are the right things to say. And so I was
yeah.
talking about that young man, and I
Yes.
want to know from you, what would you have said to him?
So I think I don't know if I would have said anything. I think sometimes folks just want to know that they are heard
Sure.
and that they are seen.
Mhm.
And I think I would just sit with that person.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
lot
I
to
didn't say
deal
much,
with.
so
Yeah.
'cause I didn't know
Yeah.
what to
I
say.
don't think it's
Yeah.
tough when how do you encourage someone who is really, lamenting, as you said, right? Who's really dealing and really weighed down and heavy with all of the things that's happening with them, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Sometimes we just want to be heard, especially it sounds like, he ain't being heard nowhere else,
Now
right?
he's 19 years old.
Yeah. So I think the other thing that I would do is I would offer him opportunities to build community outside of his family. Right. And so I would give him resources of other places where he can see and engage with folks who look like him, live life like him, experience the world like he does, so that he can get reconnected to himself in one way, but then also other folks and build a community and a tribe. Right. Like, I I think about myself at 19. I think about myself at 21, right? I think about myself at 16. Those are some really challenging, years for me, right? Coming into myself, understanding who I was as a person, sexuality, right? Thinking about navigating, experiencing homelessness, right? Food insecurities, all of these things, and it wasn't easy. And these wasn't things that I were able to go back to my family, who's for the most part very loving and supportive, and say, oh, by the way, I'm dealing with this thing, right? There's a lot of shame that exists in that, right?
Sure.
And so I think for me in that moment, I would just remind him, one, that he's human, right? And two, that what it looks like now doesn't always mean it has to be that, right?
Mhm.
And just one day at a time, one moment at a time.
Mhm.
Things will get better. I in this moment I'm thinking of, like, if he did it for me, he can do it for you. I am no
Mhm.
different,
Right.
right? You are no different than anybody else, right, who has existed in this world. We all have come through things, and it's important that we sometimes get to see a visual of, like, oh, so you not better than me. Like, you've been through some things like I've been through. Yeah, I've been through some things,
Absolutely.
and I'm on the other side, still dealing with things that may be different than the things I dealt with, 2 years ago, or not, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I would just focus on being present with him, letting him understand and know that somebody, if nobody else, if he feels like nobody else in the world sees him or hears him, that I do in this moment. And then after that, let's see if I can get you some resources to help you when you're outside of my space, right?
Sure.
Somebody else who can connect with you to help you be seen in those moments that you need it.
The last thing I want to ask you is for a final statement, something that you want to say to the activists,
Yeah.
the faith leaders,
Yeah.
particularly the religious community, regardless of what religion it is, Christianity,
Yeah.
Islamic, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What do you want to say as it relates to your work and what you would like to see?
We have to do better. We are commissioned to do better. We are required to do better. And we all have to do it together in a concerted effort, right? I'm not expecting that everybody's going to be an activist. Everybody shouldn't be an activist, right? That's not what we're all called to. But whatever you call to, whatever area you're in, lean in. We have to remove the shame and the stigma. We as queer people do nothing no different than anybody else.
That's right.
Right? We live life. We want to be happy. We want family. We want to love. All of these things exist also within our community.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself means that we deserve what everybody else deserves, which is happiness, which is joy, which is fulfillment, which is all of the things and all the desires of our heart. We deserve them. And so, I would just remind particularly clergy to, lean into what Jesus, lean into, Allah, lean into whoever it is that you focus on and that you believe in, and think about who they are and who they are in your life.
Yeah.
And remember that if you are a part of the body of that being, that you are commissioned and required to deal with people and to handle people with care, handle people at the place of their humanity, at their lowest, at their weakest. And it is your job. It is our job to be there to support them. Right. And that's how we get by. Yeah. Right. And that's how we move all of the needles, whether it's high blood pressure, whether it's HIV, whether it's, all of the things. That's how we move this work forward together. And so that's what I would say to people. And the other part I would say too, don't believe you don't have to have it all right. What you do have to have is good intentions, because we as humans know when you are intending to harm us and when you're intending to love us. That's right. And so you don't need to be perfect. I'm not perfect, right? And I have all of this knowledge and I have all of this experience, but I'm not perfect, right? And so it's okay to mess up. But it's not okay to continuously mess up and continuously intentionally mess up. And so how do we get back to that place of love? How do we get back to that place of love, of loving our neighbor, the way in which we love ourselves? And a lot of us love ourselves a lot. Some of us, that's questionable, right? And so what I would say to those folks is to go find that love for yourself.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. And if you don't have it, if you don't know it, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to other advocates. We can help, we can support, we can direct. Yeah. So you're not in this alone, but we all got to do it. We all got to do our part.
And last thing, resource. So HRC, people can contact HRC how?
Yeah, so you can contact me at hiv@hrc.org. Also, for faith leaders, one of the programs that I have, we call it I Hear, or the Interfaith Health Equity Alliance Roundtable. And what we've done is we brought faith leaders, many denominations, currently is just of Christian faith. We're trying to get other denominations and other religions a part of it. But what we did was had conversations and developed a curricula for for pastors and for people of the cloth and clergy to have these conversations around health equity, LGBTQ, HIV 101, to go back to your congregations and have these conversations. And so if you are interested in any one of those, feel free to reach out and we can absolutely help you and connect you. And if we don't have it, we can either develop it, work together to do that, and or connect you with other organizations that have those resources. And so again, you can email me at any time, or you can go to mybodymyhealth.org to get more information about all of the things that is HIV and how you can contact me directly.
I love that. Thank you so much, Torrian, for your time and for certainly your wisdom and your knowledge around HIV. We appreciate your presence today. And thank you all for watching Bridging the Gap. We appreciate you supporting us and being with us on Facebook and YouTube. And we say good night to you and have a wonderful evening.